I would like to call this meeting to order. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move that we adopt the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. First up is our finance report.
All right, we'd like to invite Teresa.
Welcome, Teresa.
Hello.
Yeah, if you want to stand there, if that's.
So I brought a couple copies. But not a ton, sorry. So this is just the main financial pieces, the fund financial statements, the government statements haven't been finished yet. So this is just a kind of a draft for special purposes. And then we'll probably be finishing up the financials this week. I'm hoping to get another draft finally next week. So some differences from this report to what you saw last year. The ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds had enough going through them that they were required to move up to your front page. So we have 5 major funds this year rather than just your normal 3. Your general fund, capital projects, and debt service. Those ones are always there, but some of the other ones sometimes rise to the top because they have enough stuff going on. So those 2 got up there, got up to the front page. It's like your A students, you know, they send you very. You can see they quite a bit of federal funding expected to come into those in the receivables category, and that's most of the federal funds that you're receiving within the next little while that you're already. On your debt service, quite a bit of a decrease there. You refunded about $5 million, almost $6 million worth of your debt. Got rid of those bonds, put them into an escrow account, so those bonds will be taken care of. So that one looks a little smaller than it did last year and the year before. This is the second year in a row in which you've made those changes to get rid of those in preparation for the new bonds and the projects that this district is looking forward to doing. If you flip over to the next page, this just gives you a small view of your expenditures and revenues for all those major funds. And then the column for the all non-majors, which has got a stamp over it, so it's hard to read, but those ones are the folded pages. So it's kind of goofy because you have 2 sets of folded pages. So the detail for what makes up those non-major funds is in that back section. And if you want to just flip to those really quick, there's a couple of new ones this year from what you had last year. And it's kind of an important detail to point out. All these COVID-related funds, each one got their own category. So you had some premium pay that came down from the governor and was required to be paid out like immediately. So that has its own column, the premium pay column. There were the rest of the CRF or the COVID relief funds that came. Those were the very first set of funds. And then the governor and the state have reallocated those funds a couple different times. So you've been getting smaller and smaller pots of that money to spend. So that column is there. And then ESSER 1, 2, and 3 by state requirement were also given their own individual funds. And if you were to put the picture of those COVID funds together, it's quite impressive how much of that money has come through the district. Don't have the CFA here, but if we look at the CFA, which is the total expenditures, federal expenditures that you've had throughout the year, if you looked at last year's and this year's, the amount of COVID dollars that have gone through is over 50%, meaning you have almost doubled the amount of funding that you've received from the federal government, specifically because of those COVID funds. So that brings me to one of the cautions that I'm passing out to all of our districts and all of our clients this year, is those COVID funds have 2 more years to run, and some districts are eating them up even faster than that. But once those are gone, people are going to be used to spending. It's just something we do as humans. When we have money, we spend it. So one thing that we would caution you is start to look now and make sure that as requirements reset, as funding stops coming in quite the plethora that it has been, because they've expanded title, they've expanded Medicaid, they've expanded the IDEA services, like all those funding sources have been more generous. So all of that is going to kind of retract back to what it was before. they've also relaxed a lot of the requirements associated with those. So requirements for food service is a great example. The requirement to make sure that students are paying when they should be paying, free when they should be free. Those have all been relaxed. Everyone is free. So now as those go back into place and as you have to really follow those guidelines again, we want to make sure that the districts have in place the processes and procedures to make sure that those are happening again. And so what we did relax during the COVID timeframe, we would suggest that you relook at those things and make sure that everything is put back into place the way that it should be, so you don't have any issues when it comes to your single audits or the state audits or the federal audits, whichever group comes in. So I didn't bring a ton of other stuff. The very last page is your general fund liquidity. And I wanted to look at this one just because you have about $15 million sitting in your general fund balance. But as we all know, 15 million sounds like a grand number until you start breaking down what's already spent, what's already allocated, what's already, assigned for other purposes. So this liquidity schedule really puts that together, puts into perspective of that 15 million, how much you really have is spendable. So if we look, we have inventory, which obviously is not spendable per se, although it is an asset. We have prepaids, which are good, but that's not actual cash that you can do stuff with. And then restrictions because of budget purposes, because of already planned budget expenditures that didn't happen this year, that will happen next year. All of those things kind of factor into it. So when it comes down to it, that 15 million really is only about 6 million that's spendable for the general fund. And that's what we focus on because all the rest of them all have restrictions on how their funds can be spent. So if there is a fund balance, it's usually allocated for some purpose already. But the general fund sometimes has a little bit of leeway. So I did some calculations in some of the other districts, and I wish I had time to do them. Maybe I'll do them for the final. But when you break down how much cash you have in your general fund, and it looks like a really big fund balance, but then when you break it down into the actual number of days that would service the district if you were to stop getting funding in, it's pretty surprising and it's pretty shocking. And it's something I think that's important for people to realize, whether it's board members or whether it's others within the district, is when you look at these dollars, it's kind of easy to feel comfortable, feel like, oh, we have plenty, we have cushion, we're good to go. But $6 million is what, 2 payrolls? One payroll.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
You said you might do it. I won't hold you accountable to it, but if you did, it'd be great. But that was kind of, that maybe answers it right there as I just, it's general funds have been in the media lately, not just ours, but several school districts. And I don't think people realize, because you're right, $6 million by itself seems like for most of us, God, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't think they realize that $6 million, the number's great, but the services that come out of that $6 million is not even one payroll.
6.5 is an average payroll, so no, it wouldn't quite cover a payroll, and it definitely wouldn't cover the lights and the heat and everything else. It's not 1 month of expenses. You can kind of think about it when you guys see your bill list.
Yeah.
It adds up.
So keep going in that direction, I guess. There. Don't be afraid to set some limits for what you want to see that fund balance be, or maybe even looking at that liquidity analysis, what you'd like that bottom number to be of the available funding for that. And I don't have a ton else. Any questions from you guys?
Yeah. On the ESSER funds, is this money that's been allocated to us, or is this actually money we've received?
That's money you've received and spent, or are waiting to receive in the case of there's involved in that.
Okay,
Yeah,
when you say waiting to receive, does that mean that it's been allocated to us and we just haven't received it yet, or it still needs approval?
Yes, so what's on your financial statements is what you have actually spent.
Okay,
So you may be waiting for reimbursements on those expenditures. You may have already received those reimbursements, but it's the actual of what you spent. So there may be more that has been allocated that has not been spent yet.
But for federal funds, we only count it when it comes in,
when we actually receive it,
which is why the budget number tends to be higher, because we'll budget all of it, but then
but we haven't necessarily received it.
financials, it lowers it.
So how much do we have left in like that ESSER
ESSER.
3 month, really?
ESSER 3,
ESSER 2, we pretty
Which
much
ESSER?
used it all, right? ESSER 2, we pretty much
Yeah, ESER two is encumbered through the end of the year. ESER three is technically encumbered, assuming all of the projects that were approved last year go forward. But there were a few that were questionable, like the bathrooms. So we've essentially allocated it all over the next 2 fiscal years, but we'll see what happens with projects as we, we're still waiting for IF to finish and for the basement are the big ones. But we also had, learning loss built in there for 1 more year. That's like your interventionists, health counselors, health techs. So we had staffing built in that as well. So come spring, we'll have to see, because then we only have 1 more year. So whatever's left for the next budget cycle, we're gonna wanna make sure that we allocate, or reallocate, I guess, because we inevitably will probably get to spring and have some left that we planned on spending or we couldn't hire or that sort of thing.
One more thing, just to point out to you, a lot of people have had questions on how districts have been spending those COVID funds and trying to put, the huge dollar signs to, well, what did it actually accomplish? So if you look down at the expenditure section, which is page 14, the second page, the pack that I gave you, you have the breakdown of how much of ESER 2 and ESER 3 went to instruction, went to admin, went to support services, and so that breakdown is there. And you can get even more granular on that and kind of get some more detail. We'll have more detail in the budget to actual reports that'll be in our main report. So you can see that on a little more granular level and be able to tell where those funds went to be able to answer questions or just for curiosity's sake. There was one other thing. So one of the reasons these are taking a little longer than normal, GASB 87 required some changes. So GASB is the governing board for governments. They tell you what you have to do and what you have to be and how you have to look. So your financial statements are designed based on their requirements. Well, one of the things that they did was implement GASB 87, which stated that any lease that used to be called an operating lease, used to be expensed as you go, is now required to be put on your balance sheet. So you can see a piece of it, you can't see the whole thing, but a piece of it shows up in your assets section. You guys have some Verizon tower leases. They lease some space to put their towers on your building. You have 3 towers. And so it has a lease receivable of $850,000, which sounds like a lot of money. That's a 20-year span of time. So it's a little misleading in my opinion, but GASB felt like that was important for people to know, whether it be on the receivable side or whether it be on the liability side. These contracts and that long-term view of what those contracts look like, they wanted that presented. So you have the lease receivable there, you have an unearned lease revenue down a little bit below, that kind of offsets it. They disappear at different rates, so it causes a little bit of an offset change, but that's why they're not exactly the same. And then on your government-wide financial statements, you have the right of use asset. I don't know if you've heard that term yet, but the right of use asset and the lease liability. So this receivable side is when people give you money. Liability side is when you pay out for leased copiers, leasing land and building and stuff like that. So those are new. They require a bunch of new disclosures. So you'll see about 2.5 extra pages worth of disclosures related to that information. And they felt like it really provided some good detail for people to know the contracts that the district is entered in that are multi-year and intentions going forward, both in the income side and in the expense side. Sorry, I'll stop talking. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
Okay. And that brings us to the technology service update. Hi, Tito.
Good afternoon on this fine, beautifully cold day. Okay, so I've actually mined over quite a bit of the pieces that I can share in the 10 minutes I've been allocated. So I'm going to consolidate as much as I can, but provide as much information as I can. So if you have questions, wouldn't mind just waiting till the end. It is cybersecurity, cyber awareness month. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that first, what we do as a district to protect everybody. The most common attack that we're hitting as a district are phishing attacks. And those of you that don't know what those are, they're basically social engineered emails getting out to people trying to steal information. So our systems that we have in place, and I don't mean to scare anybody, but it's a scary number to think about. Our systems that we have in place repel more than 1,000 of those on a weekly basis. Not only do we repel all of those, but we also react very quickly to about 50 to 60 per day that actually get through. So we are being attacked. It's cyber threats are here to stay. Hacks are here to stay. We just have to continue to harden our services as we go on. So we've done quite a bit in that to that effect. So every single year, if you guys recall what happened in 2018, those of you that weren't part of the board at that time, 2018 was a bad year for the IT department. We had an incident and we had to react to that incident, and learned a lot of hard lessons throughout that whole process. We weren't ready, to be completely honest with you. We were not ready at the time, and we made incredible leaps and bounds to get us ready for the future. Every single year since then, we do what we call penetration testing. It's just basically an industry standard now. All companies that house any kind of database information, which we do penetration testing with a third party. Basically what these guys do is they set up some kind of a server in our environment and they attack us like crazy. They look for all sorts of vulnerabilities, all sorts of holes, phishing attacks, and take a look at the services that we have in place and then provide a very big detailed list of recommendations to harden our network. I'm grateful to say or actually want to give props to the folks that we have in our department that are working with our cybersecurity programs in that the last 2 years we have passed with flying colors and the recommendations have been incredibly minimal. And it was last said by our previous company that we are better off and more ready for a cyber attack than most Fortune 500 companies that have the budget 3 to 4 to 5 times bigger than we do. So that's a celebration that I'd like to clap to. That's very awesome. It is a very, very big thing to even understand everything that we're doing as a district. So this year, every single October since 2018, we do basically all of our cyber protocols. We take a look at our incident response plan. We ensure that that's in place. We go through what we call tabletop exercises where we have the response team come, take a look at what's going on, and we figure it all out, make sure that if an incident does happen, everything's in place to ensure that if we're ready to go, we can respond quickly, all the key players are in place, and we know exactly what to do depending on the type of incident that actually happens. So we do that all the time, and we actually do that twice a year. So that's just the cyber pieces there. I want to go straight into the next piece here. Just a brief report on the department itself. Our department is currently undergoing basically what I would call a philosophical change. We have to modernize IT operations to meet the demand, basically. As you guys may recall in 2020, COVID hit, technology and COVID. We went crazy. So basically we had about 6,000 Chromebooks in the district at the time. In 2 months, we went from 6,000 to over 12,000 Chromebooks. We had enough for et cetera, and we had to replace some old ones. Not only that, the demand on our service since then has really just kind of skyrocketed. So basically from there, we've taken a look. We've been the director for about 22 months now. And in that time, I've looked at our operations and taken a very serious look and audited a lot of things that we were doing and realized that we were very much in the legacy and or reactive way of managing IT operations. So we had to, with a recommendation from Dr. Shank, align our goals with that of the HRS goals and initiatives. It's a little different for an IT department, but I did find and started studying a philosophy called top performing organizations, and it's basically HRS for an IT department. So what we've been doing over the last 12 months is refocusing our efforts to that effect. Basically, we're looking at different data indicators that we weren't really getting from before. I didn't really know this, but we've never really sampled and or sent a survey out to any of our staff the entire time the IT department, as far as I understand, has been alive. So there's a lot of data that we weren't really getting from our staff members that could become then good actionable data. And we at times would put forth initiatives that weren't really helpful in an educational environment. So to that end, we're trying to refocus our efforts and modernize and become more proactive than more reactive, because it's absolutely necessary given the landscape that we Our district inventory numbers have just under 30,000 devices that our IT department is required to manage. Access control, it's all sorts of different things. It's from, our conferencing systems, our networking closets, and then all the devices that we give out to our students and staff. So there's quite a bit. And basically, like I was saying before, the TPO philosophy does go hand in hand with their initiatives. It's incredibly data driven. So we are continually in the process of refining what I'm calling our mold and ensuring that as we get to where we need to be, that we continue to refine that process and become more proactive. Now, going into my next point, school safety is a top priority for our department. We're consistently trying to take a look at incidents that have happened and take a look at those reports, learn lessons, and take a look at the lessons learned, information in those reports. And then we think tank things all the time as a department. We have certain individuals that are in charge of pieces, and those individuals then provide plans and or possible strategies to better harden the security and safety of each one of our schools. Case in point, right now we're working on centralized access, it escaped my brain. Anyway, at Skyline Iowa Falls High School, we're getting added walls with access control to provide single point of entry. That's where it was. Single point of entry flow during school hours. So those of you that might be aware, we've got those projects approved. We're working with Bateman Hall to get that taken care of. So during school hours, folks are forced to go into the office before they can even gain access to our buildings. We're doing the exact same thing with some of our new elementary schools. We're partnering with Kevin and M&O to get all this taken care of as quickly as we possibly can. But as you guys know, permits are what's problem. So the more that you can poke the city to get permits moving, the better off we are and the faster we can move. Let's see. So we're continually actually working through that process and looking and doing walkthroughs at all the schools to ensure if we're not doing something at this school that we've got something in mind, whether it's access control systems, surveillance, intrusion detection, whatever we can do to harden the security systems in those schools, provide that safety and security that we need to. And just kind of my last point here, and I want to take some time a little bit to kind of explain this one as best I can. In the state of Idaho, there's a growing disparity among regarding technology funding for staff and classroom technology. The disparity, as I see it, is that state legislatures, superintendent continually sit and talk about increasing funding for staffing and for technology, but the exact opposite has happened since 2020. In 2020, we had a 50% holdback of technology funding specifically. We were hoping to get it in 2021, didn't happen. And then again, this year, we had that same holdback and they took another $100,000 from us. In reaction to that, the IT department has had to let go basically of 4 different positions. So our department is shrinking and our required services are increasing. When that happened, the district was nice enough, so to speak, to fill out those positions for at least another 18 months with ESSER money. And we were able to figure that out for a while, but through the process of attrition, we basically had to get rid of those 4 positions. And it's very possible, because ESSER money is now starting to kind of dry up, that we're going to lose 1 to 2 more. Now, the one thing that I would ask and beg of this committee, of the leaders of this district would be, as you have time and you have the opportunity to meet with state legislatures, and state representatives, again, give them that poke. Just say, hey, I got all this other stuff I need to talk about, but you guys need to fix the state of technology funding in the state right now. If you look at other states around us, they're funded much, much higher than we are. And because of that, we have people outside K-12 education, we have people consistently kind of running through our department and going out to other businesses. In the last year alone, we've had retention issues with our technician level folks. In most cases, they'll start working for us about 3 to 4 months, sometimes 6 months if we're lucky, and then they'll get an offer doing the exact same job outside our district at almost a third to a little bit half more the pay than what they're getting here, and we just can't offer it. We just don't have funding. So in addition to the disparity that I just spoke about, we are having retention issues with our technician level folks. It's really hard to find quality people that want to work for the salary and wages that we can offer. So just for this board to kind of think about a little bit, and if you can help us at any level possible to get that kind of back geared into where we were at least 3 or 4 years ago, where they thought a little bit more about technology staffing and technology funding. And now we're dealing with an incredible expense that we were able to backfill with all the devices that we purchased. They're going to become end of life. Where's that funding going to come from? It needs to come from the state, or we're going to have to figure it out as a district. So we're working through the processes that we absolutely have to. Worst case scenario, should we have to make our devices last longer than 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, whatever it is, to deal with that if we have to. But if we can just get this board and this body to help us figure all that out, that'd be very appreciated. Let's see. That's pretty much the gist of the things that I had to share with you today. Are there any questions?
Well, first of all, thank you for being proactive on bringing the department together and all the obstacles that you're facing, that you're talking about. So I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Any questions for Tito? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you much, Captain. Today.
Little jittery. All right. That brings us to maintenance and operations. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I think you all have to hand out the
Yes.
maybe Jessica. First of all, I want to have you take a look at our maintenance and operation board chart. I just wanted to give you that so you understand what our department's made of, the number of people. We have a fairly small department here, side the district could be operated and maintained. And we have some challenges coming up in 2023 that several of our key individuals will be retiring, and those that have been around for a long time in the district inside and out. So we've got some challenges, especially like what we talked about with the challenges of hiring and recruiting qualified employees. So I'll talk about that a little later, but I just wanted you to have a copy of that. And then also the next page is the list of responsibilities for the M&O department has to cover for the relatively small group that we have. I just wanted you to take away with that so that we won't take time to go over it. But as you can see, going over that list, there's an awful lot of responsibilities that we have as far as maintaining literally every aspect of every building in the district and all the equipment, all the grounds equipment, and everything else. So fairly substantial task for the small group we have. In particular, the fact that we have over 450 acres in the district to maintain and over 1.7 million square feet of buildings. So that's the equivalent of over 1,000 average sized homes and over 1,300 average sized yards to maintain with our 4 grounds maintenance people and our 1.5 plumbers and 3/4 electricians and 1 locksmith, 1 painter, and 3 HVAC technicians, 3 trades helpers. We have a lot to do. We kind of got thrown behind on our work orders this past summer because of the summer school to keep all our buildings up and operational. And so we kept getting in the full number of work orders that we normally don't get during the summer. That's when we typically play catch up on the work orders. So we couldn't do that this summer. So on the next page, you'll see a spreadsheet that's what I print out regularly to kind of get a quick idea of where we stand as far as the work orders, from 1 month old up to several months old, and the number in each of the different trades, so I can see real quick where we might need some help, what trades need the help. And as you can see, our electrician, we have 1 HVAC technician that's also a licensed electrician. So he's been helping out with the electrician side because we lost 3/4 of our electrician due to an on-site injury that he's has long-term disability there. So he's pretty much grounded to the the ground level work, we can't get on ladders. And so we only use him about 1/4 of the time, and the transportation uses him as a bus driver the rest of the time. So we're down to his 4th time, and then half time with electrician. We've had electrician position open for about 1.5 years. No applicants. So that's the struggle we're having right now. And as you can see, with the number 4 on the list, anticipated 2023 organization changes. Mike McGuire, one of our very knowledgeable, he's the energy manager and also the building automation system specialist. And so he's retiring April 1st, and also Kent Shavy's decided to retire sometime in spring. He hasn't decided when, but he's supposed to retire in October, but he's decided. His wife made the decision to retire in the spring instead of the fall, so they can enjoy a summer together. But so those are our 2 oldest, most knowledgeable people in our group. We'll survive. We'll carry on. We'll be able to continue without them, but they're going to be a challenge to replace because of the issues of fire. Mike McGuire is a very good HVAC person, a very good plumber. He's a licensed plumber, so he's been helping out our 1 full-time plumber quite significantly. So he is looking to come back after the 90-day required to leave and work part-time if the district allows that. So, and work part-time until his wife retires in a few years. So we're excited about that, to be able to maintain his expertise a few more years, at least part-time. So we also are expecting to lose our full-time locksmith due to a position available at the site, which we can't compete with, and so he's applied there. So we're looking at possibly hiring one of our full-time custodians. It's also a certified locksmith, and so he's also applied at the site to get to a satisfactory pay level for him. He'll stay and work as a full-time locksmith, and that level is about where I think the district would be acceptable for the district. So we're hoping he'll come on as our full-time locksmith. We have a significant need for a full-time locksmith in the district. It's a good position. So, also looking at dissolving the environmental safety and health position. That's a position that most districts are starting to eliminate. They take care of our asbestos management plans for the district and lead-based paint and different environmental safety type of things, the chemicals in the district. And but it's really about 50% part-time job at best. So we've over the years been really creative in trying to keep them busy. I mean, we've needed that expertise in the district. We're slowly certifying some of our trades helpers to be able to take on some of those positions. We've got a trades helper that's certified in asbestos management, so he can take over that. So we're trying to get people in key positions where we can possibly dissolve that position. Actually, maybe increase the pay of some other people in our group to be able to help them move up and take on additional responsibilities. That's just under consideration. I have a list there of the possible positions because of the law that we discussed, and also the growth of the district with the CTEC building and the 49th Street facility, and the possibility of the bond passing. We'll need to hire at least one additional HVAC technician, trades helper, locksmith, groundskeeper, one plumber, and still ongoing trying to get an electrician. So that's going to be the big challenge of our group for this next year, is to maintain the staffing that's required to continue properly maintaining the district. We'll continue doing it. We'll continue trying to hire, do the best we can, what we work with, And what we can, we'll hire out. Continue maintaining the district as it needs to be maintained. Some of the projects the more major ones we have going on right now, remodel of the elementary school, special ed timeout rooms to make them safer and more accommodating to the students that spend time in there. And also, converting a Skyline storage room, 106 into a classroom. Being that program is getting more students, needing more space in Skyline. So, give them a 4th classroom. We're going to try and get that done by January. So it's pretty much a big storage room that's full of stuff. We're that into a nice classroom for the students. Also, the project that Tito talked about as far as the 4 newer elementary schools, trying to provide more secure entry where everybody has to go through the office. So we're going to remove the window that's in the vestibule and turn that into a door. That's where we'll go through the office and out the building, so, as well as other walls of security throughout the building to make it more secure, more difficult to make free access through all the buildings. In the buildings, visitors. Also, the TAC facility oversight, admin basement remodel oversight, Idaho Falls High School electrical upgrade. That should be done here in about a week or 2. So that project, they just received all the parts that they've been waiting for months to complete that project. So, some of the other things we have going on, that happen this time of year is the major PM work of all the interior and exterior HVAC equipment around the district. As you can see, there's a lot of them on the list. Winterization of the summer HVAC equipment and the sprinkler systems. PM work of all the snow removal equipment that is going to be put in use real soon. And major work on we've been doing a lot of work on the HVAC equipment, maintenance over the rooftop units. And so we finally got the last one up and going now, so hopefully it stays up. And focus on other things, but better HVAC guys really doing it. And then the Braxton multi-department storage room, we're converting the old wood shop into a storage facility to get rid of all the sheds that are on site there at Braxton, so that they can have a space in there to store all the tractors, cheerleader. So clean up that area. And then also we have over 400 running work orders that we're focusing on to prioritize pretty much daily. And then the continual move requests, we've had a phenomenal number of move requests around the district to take care of as far as furniture. An unusual amount this year. And then the summer work preparation, as soon as school starts and we end our summer projects and all the summer work, we can start pretty much immediately going through and inspecting all the different surfaces around the district, the roofs, the floors, the walls, interior, exterior surfaces, asphalt, concrete, and start generating a list of what we want to accomplish next summer for summer projects. And then we also start accepting requests from all the district employees and start prioritizing their lists, coming up with a complete list of theirs and ours, and then we determine what we can afford in the budget and what our time will allow us to do, and put that list together, and so we're ready for summer. We have a very busy summer every year, trying to accomplish all the requests, fulfill all the honey-do lists from around the district, trying to make everybody happy. And so it's kind of challenging this past summer. Buildings full of kids. So it's had a challenge trying to do all their cleaning while they were also buildings full of students. But it all worked out. Got almost all the summer projects completed. We have a large number of work orders, but we take care of them. So just carry it on day by day.
Speaking of work orders, Kevin, can you explain that last page to us? Like, what are the different columns representing 0 to 31, 31 to 61? Is that
Those are days.
us number of days?
Work orders have been open and accepted. And a lot of those are including next summer's projects that are also put in as a work order. They also include PMs of equipment that can't have preventive maintenance done during the school. So it has to be done either during the holiday when there's building or in spring break or during the summer. So those are entered in as a placeholder, as a reminder that need to be done. And they pop up on a regular kind of schedule. So that we can take care of when they're supposed to be done. So, but that's why some of them are like 120 days.
Yeah, so to make sure I'm understanding this right. So for example, let me just find one. Heating and air conditioning, you have 14 work orders that have been open for 120 days. Is that a fair way to assess that?
Yeah, a lot of those are also, we put in for like when we have equipment that we want to replace. This is also where we put all our schedule, all our replacements of equipment throughout the district. Like furnaces, we bought a big load of furnaces on a clearance that we purchased so we can next summer replace a whole bunch of the furnaces that need replaced. They're getting old, and so that's where a lot of those are. And we put those actually in the first of the summer, anticipating replacing this summer. We replaced a few of them. Most of them were put into the CTEC building and also down in the basement of the admin building. So those were projects that are going to be held next summer. So we're just maintaining that equipment in a different place.
I have another question, and I ask it just knowing that if someone asked me, I couldn't answer it. But I preface that with saying I hope that your employees, if they're watching or listening, don't take offense to the question either. But talk to me like a locksmith. Why does the district need a full-time locksmith? And is that something we've looked at maybe contracting out, or have we looked at that and saw that an employee is a better way to go? But what does a full-time locksmith do at District 91?
Yeah, a lot. Full-time locksmith is not only responsible for the locks, but they're responsible for all doors and all door hardware, closers, all the key cylinders, everything that has to do with the door, the hinges, everything. And if you've been around the district, that takes time to realize what use our doors get, from hard balls being used as backstop or pitch backs.
Mhm.
And they just get kicked open, and so our doors go through some major abuse in the district, and we're constantly, he's busy all day, every day, either changing out cylinders, rekeying things from teacher request, principal request, to fixing doors, replacing closers. It is a full-time
Okay,
position.
that makes sense. I was just thinking
We have
keys.
included on that list the number of door hardware and everything else in the district. I mean, it's a phenomenal amount. All the interior and exterior works.
Okay,
He also inspects our roofs and makes sure that all our roof drains are cleared and checks them for any degradation, so that when we get up and walk the roofs, we have an idea of where to go and to determine what roofs need to be repaired and replaced. It's surprising how much of the ground ends up on the roof. Now, if you don't continually maintain that, you end up with cattails growing on the roof, with weeds and trees and everything else in a very short period of time.
thank you.
Especially in Idaho.
Well, thank you to your department. The list of items that you take care of is overwhelming, to say the least, but thank you to
It's
everyone.
challenging, but it's a good challenge.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. on to our discussion about boundary split session, year-round school, modular classrooms.
Very good. In response to direction given by the board last time, we prepared some items for you. I've got a sheet for you to look at as far as talking points. These are, of course, just suggestions. We don't have to visit all of them. But one of the things we wanted to share with you tonight is our survey results. And I've asked Margaret to do that. So she's going to talk about our parent survey results and then our staff survey results. And I think there's a handout for each of you. It looks like a packet. Yeah, you got it. Okay. Margaret.
Yes, thank you for giving me some time today. As Superintendent Shanks said, last week we deployed 2 surveys, one to our parents and one to our staff. Those surveys closed on Sunday night, although we did take some staff responses on.
Sorry, Margaret, can I get you to speak up?
We can just move the phone down.
That'd be great, thank you.
So we deployed those surveys last week and closed them on Sunday and Monday and are just starting to look through the results. So what you have is a complete packet, both the parent survey and also the staff survey, and it includes all of the comments that we've received in response to all of the different questions. I have not had a chance yet to go through and review those comments for appropriate language and some of those kinds of things. So that is something that I will be doing over the next couple of the next day. But I did want to give you just kind of a general overview. With the parent survey, we received about 1,100 responses. I think it's safe to say that with both surveys, neither staff nor parents are really happy about either of these options. But with our parents, there is a slight preference. 51% prefer year-round school, 49% prefer split sessions. We asked our parents sort of what their greatest concern was about split sessions. More than a quarter of them, their biggest worry was about just disruption to family routines and traditions. Again, about a quarter worried about siblings being on different schedules. There was also a concern with split sessions. About 18% of respondents worried about impact on extracurricular opportunities. And then about 17% worried about other concerns. And again, I'm sorting through those comments. We had almost 200 comments with sort of those other concerns. In regard to year-round school with our parents, again, the biggest worry, about 36%. The concern was about disruption to family routines and schedules. 23% worried about siblings being on different schedules. And then about 15% again had some other concerns, which we're sorting through. And then 14% worried about just disruptions to the regular school calendar. In addition to those specific questions, we just asked an open-ended, what are your concerns and comments? And again, filtering through those, we had more than 250 different concerns that were shared as part of this, that part of the survey. We did get responses from parents at all of our schools across the district. All response rates, varied. We saw less response from our elementary school parents than from our secondary school parents. The highest response rates were from Idaho Falls and Taylorview parents, and then the second highest were from Skyline, or I guess third and fourth highest were from Skyline and Eagle Rock parents. So as I said, that gives you just kind of a preliminary review, and then we are working to go through those comments and catalog them for in all of those different questions. With our staff survey, we received about almost 500 responses, 483 total responses. With our staff, 54% preferred split sessions, whereas about 46% preferred year-round school, so a little bit different there. Sorry, 54% preferred split sessions and 45% preferred year-round school. So the greatest concern with our staff is very similar to parents, worried about disruptions to family routines and traditions, and then Also just other concerns with staff, just taking a cursory look at those other concerns. A lot of concerns about staffing and how we would balance staff, how we would address teacher shortages, retention issues, those kinds of things. The greatest concern with year-round school was, again, disruption to family routines and traditions. Another big worry is disruption to the regular school calendar, and then lots of just other concerns and worries. And again, we received responses from all of our schools and different departments, big variations in those response rates. Again, the biggest responses we received were from our high school, it's both IF and Skyline, and then from our middle schools, Taylor View and Eagle Rock. So that gives you kind of a preliminary review of those results. And as I said, you do have those complete surveys, including all those comments, but we're working now to review those comments and cap them and dig in a little bit deeper in there.
Any questions for Margaret on the surveys? That's a lot to sort through.
So we have all the comments here though, right?
Yeah, all of the comments are included. As I said, I've not had a chance to kind of go through.
Yeah, that's fine. I've read a couple. That's why I grinned.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely, Larry. I will do that. If not tonight, first thing in the morning, I'm heading over to that Eagle Rock band concert, but I can get it to you quickly. Okay, thank you.
So I have some questions on logistics. Is there any questions on survey stuff? Can I ask questions on logistics, Dr. Shea?
Yeah. Yep.
So I still don't understand how year-round school, I appreciate the handout you put together. How does year-round school alleviate overcrowding? Because you have 45 days of instruction or 60 days. I guess either one doesn't matter. You have 45 days of instruction. Let's just stick with that one. And then 15 days off track. 15 days off track doesn't allow enough time for a second group to utilize the building. So does year-round school alleviate overcrowding, or does it just take the hours and spread them year-round, but doesn't so much put less students in the facility?
Sure. So you maximize the calendar year round. So if you, like, let's say you choose the 4 section option. If you look at the calendar, and we prepared a document, there's red, green, blue, and yellow. And so let's say each of these are the 4 groups, the 4 tracks.
Is this based on year-round or split session?
Year round.
This is year-round?
This is year round. So, and actually, I need to give Jess credit. She's the one that helped put this together with our calendar, the way it looks. So you'll notice it should be fairly similar to look at, but you can see that at any one given time, one group of students is not in the school. And so you take that 25% out, and that's how you maximize more of the capacity in the school to be able to have that happen. And that's the reason why people use it more for facilities issues, waiting for a school to be built, or there's pressure, then you'll see it for other reasons. But that's kind of how this plays out in using year-round school, is you're taking a group of students out of session, running 3 in at the same time. It's the same number of students that go to that building, but you're creating capacity.
So split sessions make sense to me in that. I mean, split session is easy. Divide your student body in half go in the morning, half go in the afternoon/evening.
Right.
And you're the same number of days that we are today. My tiny capacity can understand that concept.
That's much easier. This is quite complicated.
But I'm still stuck on year-round on how that increases capacity of a building. Like you said, a 25% reduction.
Or a third. It depends on
Or
what
a
you
third,
think.
but. So are there multiple tracks in year-round?
I mean, that's what you're taking tracks, and they're
Help
coming.
explain.
Students are coming
There's
in.
4 calendars, so there's
Yeah,
4 tracks.
4.
So each calendar is a track. Oh, so I got it.
Right.
A, B, C, D would each be on a different track. Like if you had 4 different kids.
So how does that work for teaching?
Yeah, and
For
your class
instruction.
periods, like, yeah.
It requires more teachers.
Well, both will require more
Both
teachers,
will.
right?
Which, I mean, if the bond passes, we're going to have more teachers. I
Correct,
mean, so
yeah,
part
I'm
of this more teacher situation, we're going to have more teachers at some point anyway.
Growth requires that.
How much? To me, this seems like we would need a lot more teachers.
Right, so structurally, if you have 4 tracks that need to be taught, and so you think about teachers in, teachers out. I mean, in those days that are breaks, that are in between. A group of students are coming in, another group is coming off. So it's all in how that plays out, and we'd have to schedule that. Master schedules have to be built either way, split sessions or this. And if that were determined, we would need to work that through. We would not have had enough time to build those models. Yeah, just-
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's look at August, for example.
Mhm.
We have red is every day, green is every day, blue is the first 3 weeks, and yellow's the bottom 2 weeks. So so we're taking math class. All these kids are taking math class. Are they all potentially in the same class, or is red and green in the same class, but we need a different teacher for blue and yellow?
Okay, so I'm going to preface my answer to that in that it is rare that you see a high school go year round. High schools would typically do a split session
So it's so complicated.
because this is complicated based upon course completion.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah,
rare.
that's what I'm trying to understand is how does someone complete a course?
I would straight up would not recommend this for secondary schools,
So this is for elementary schools?
mostly for elementary school. But I did run into an article where someone was advocating for year-round school at a high school. I don't know that it looks like this. I think they're taking their population, their enrollment, and going to school all year.
With the
Not-
same enrollment?
Right, with the same enrollment, not looking to
trying to
maximize
reduce-
space.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a movement to go to year-round school in general in this country to get rid of summer break. But that's not the same as year-round school for capacity reasons.
That's
Right.
correct, yeah. And so I was narrowing my point of view for capacity, not for programming selection. And let's go to school year round now. And then take a track, you take 8 weeks worth, you take 15 days off, you take 8 weeks. That's a whole different discussion, I believe, than what we're working on tonight. So
Fundamentally, I mean, I think the only way you make that work in the high school is like if you go to a block.
It's a block thing,
Emerson,
yes.
where
Yeah.
your class, you have one class for a month or 6 weeks, and that's all you focus on all day, every day,
Right,
you know,
but it-
and then you go to the next one, like that. could
Montana
work.
Western,
The college I went to was like that.
is that way.
Montana
It's
Western.
awesome.
Yeah.
I highly love it, but it's a lot of work for teachers and students and.
Yeah,
for
but
everyone.
I don't see it as a facilities answer. So,
For the high schools?
no,
Okay.
that's my take. We have other experts in the room.
Miss Larry can hear this side of the table.
So from an elementary school then, and that makes sense, because I was just thinking high school. And I'm like, I don't understand how this alleviates overcrowding and then how you teach and how it works, but that makes
Yeah.
more sense now. And I would dare say the lady that told me that she loved year-round school for her kids when they were in Utah, I'm guessing it was probably more like what you're saying, the same enrollment that was just spread through the whole year.
It depends on where they're at. So, let's say you're in Alpine School District and the growth is so significant, you can't build schools fast enough. You're going to use this model, and they have for
For
decades.
year-round in their high school?
Year-round in their elementary schools. And so it really is a trigger most in those types of situations to create space. The other is programming. It's a programming choice. You want your students to go to school year-round, and so you take those periods of time, 15 days off, and you block it through the year. It's not this model. It's a choice. And so, and there are articles of advocacy for that for various reasons, and there are pros and cons, or reasons to do it or not reasons to do it. And sometimes it's purely based on preference, because the research is stating that it's inconclusive in terms of whether or not the results for student achievement are greater for going to year round. There are some other reasons, but achievement doesn't usually come out in the research as being favorable. So I brought some of that with me if you want to look at it. I didn't make a copy because it's that thick, and you can take it if you'd like. But and I think I mentioned that in some of my comments here, like item 5 here. There's a fair amount of research about year-round school. Bollinger and Cruz state that the benefits and drawbacks of year-round school are at best inconclusive. Another study by Idaho State University concludes that year-round school does not boost learning. So people will typically go to it for other reasons. And maybe perhaps they'll see something that these research studies haven't.
Maybe it's too early to ask this question, but you had a pretty strong feeling or recommendation for high schools by way of split session or year round. Do you have that? Are you at the point that you have a recommendation for elementary schools based on your research on what you think would be better for our district?
Yeah, I think there's factors that the board would need to weigh that, for instance, some schools are overcrowded, a couple aren't. So is that a system-wide decision? I don't know that we're mature enough in our study to state one way or another tonight for elementary.
To me, like along those lines, sounds like a double factor. There's that factor, if the bond passes, because why would we look at adjusting overcrowded schools and undercrowded schools? If we're having new schools, we need to do it in anticipation of that. But if we're not getting new schools, some of those adjustments are gonna be very different too.
Yeah,
I mean, they're kind of on the same path, but very different. Challenge there.
with the projected growth, we've heard 4,000 units. If we're not able to open new schools, our answers are going to have to be different, and this might be the answer.
It's funny on that 4,000 number. I'm aware of a number of what are they called? Developments that I thought were included in that 4,000. I know about of 1,000 doors, like I said, that I thought were included in the 4,000 number, but I've learned today that they're still waiting for planning and zoning. And they're several months into the process. One of them's over a year. And that's why I think that they were part of the 4,000. Based on our own experience, I guess I should have known better to make that assumption that they'd get a building permit. But anyway, it just even concerns me now more, because we know of 4,000 that have been approved for planning and zoning for construction to begin. And now I personally know of 1,000, and I'm sure I don't know of all of them, but I personally know of 1,000 doors that are waiting to be approved. Where the planning is there, the plans are out, they're just going back and forth making minor adjustments, and they'll be approved, I would assume,
I had heard the same too, that there's projects that are just in the works.
So it's definitely an issue. There's one other thing I'd like to address, because I laugh at the comments, that people say. And I said from the very beginning, I think our board needs to consider all options. And we did look at a bond as a potential solution, and it continues to be a potential solution to the issues of overcrowdedness and safety that our district faces right now. But I'm open to all solutions. If someone emailed me today and said, have you thought about this? And we hadn't, I would come to the next board meeting and ask Dr. Shank and team to look into the options, just like we did for this. I think we don't wait for one option to expire and then consider the next option. That's a business that goes out of business.
Right.
I think we got to look at all options as they come to our attention.
Well, that's I had a random thought, and again, there's going to be money constraints at some point, but it's like, okay, the site where they've shifted a bunch of people to online, do they have any empty buildings where we could put people for a little bit? I mean, it's not a long-term solution. There's no way we can afford to rent facilities as a long-term solution. But, I don't know if there's a short-term, well, but they're still modified and, but anybody, they're just one of the people that, that for a short-term place to put people.
Yeah.
I have a question about logistics, if I can change the topic. In an elementary school, I think we're all used to the model where you go in on the first day of school and that's your classroom. And your teacher, that's her or his classroom. and you stay there the whole year and things get decorated and changed and desks moved and stuff. I have a feeling that year-round school doesn't quite look like that the same way in the classrooms.
It doesn't. The space is used by multiple people. It's a different look.
Yeah.
So it's
So
no
it's like a
longer
pop-in.
Mrs. Smith's classroom.
It's
It's
classroom
Mr.
101.
Smith, Dr. Nelson or Mr. Nelson and Mrs. Jones type thing that may all be using that
Like renting a space.
building.
Good thought. Yeah, it's different.
Have you gone as far, Dr. Shank, to look at the staffing on both options and what? I'm assuming split session is like basically doubling your teachers. Is that fair to say, or is that not accurate?
Well, if you look at the model, we'd have to look at the 12-hour day. So we have 6 hours of instruction. And so let's just say hypothetically, it's 7 to 1 and then 1 to 7. Our current teacher contract does not, doesn't look like that. So we would have to take a look at our contract, how it is that we work those hours, build the master schedule, and figure out what's needed. My analysis so far would be, and it's just cursory, we need to hire some additional staff to be able to do this, to make it happen. And then also we'd have to modify our contract in some way so that it can get done. What's missing there is the 7 to 1. That's just instruction. We still need passing and lunch. And so we got to squeeze that in some capacity. You can, it's possible, you can petition the state board to have those 6 hours reduced. That's somewhat familiar, I think, during the pandemic. But this is different, and there's no guarantees that they would approve that. So, that's one piece, but really it's looking at those 990 hours that were required to instruct annually and how to do that in the school year. Staffing models we've not studied. Reason being is there's no master schedule that's been developed, and that would take some time. It would be a huge undertaking, and we would need to get going on it right away. So
I can only speak for myself, but I think it's something we need to get going on. Personally speaking,
Yes.
I mean,
Because we're still gonna have a gap, regardless if the bonds pass. We don't have a high school just to, roll out. And so we've still got the safety and overcrowding issues.
Mhm.
And we've got to figure out some solution to that. Yeah. We've got somewhere to put the ninth graders for 2 years. Great, and that solves it. We don't have to go to split session. If we can, but I don't know. There's the issues aren't gonna fix overnight either.
right.
is it possible to overlap some? I'm just thinking out loud. Like, obviously, everyone's got to take math and science, so they're in the 2 split sessions. But do they overlap some to where, like, maybe people who are taking German, you don't need to teach German in both morning and afternoon session? Can they overlap some so you get like the electives?
Band.
Yeah, so your required ones are there for sure in the morning, they're for sure in the afternoon. And
They're
then
in the middle of.
I'm just thinking out loud, maybe you guys are laughing at
I'm not
me
like
as
No,
people who
I'm
know
just
what's
thinking of
involved.
capacity again, though.
It's it's building a master schedule around what's possible.
Right.
And so it's a matter of, it's going to take some work. I mean, a master schedule is no easy thing to
Is
accomplish,
there someone that would? let
even
us
from year to
borrow
year. What's that?
one? Is there someone that would
Just
let us
for
borrow
summer,
one
yeah.
that they had to do and we can
Oh, we can.
piggyback?
Remember that typically you do a split sessions type of approach due to fire, catastrophe, pandemic,
Right.
and they're not typically long-term solutions. I don't know of anybody that stays with it. They mitigate it and they get out of it because it's very unpopular. And any qualitative research that's been done around this particular question, or anybody that's gone through it, rarely has anything positive to say about it. It disrupts lives, like some of the comments that you'll see when you read.
Well, our district's done it, I believe, twice.
Twice, long time ago, but yeah, twice. And there was a mitigating factor at the end. So a school's being built or something along those lines. A school was burned down, so they went to split sessions. That's my understanding.
Do you know the last time, was it in 91 that they did
Was it 90?
No,
Was it in the nineties?
yeah, it
We
was
just had
way
mine.
before.
91 and
Or no, it
90.
was done in the seventies
Seventies and then
when Skyline was built.
Memory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Central burned down.
Yeah, I think it was when Central burnt down, so that would have been
For Skylines.
forties, and then when Skyline was built, which was in the.
It was right after I graduated that they added on here.
I think it was 67, 68.
73 is when Central burned down.
70.
Okay. So other
It'd be
things,
interesting to know the impact the teachers, is that possible to do before master schedule? Like what would be the progression of steps that need to take place?
I don't, it's a level of expertise that sits on the staff now. I don't believe anybody's done this. So it's going to have to take we're going to take a little bit of time to study it out. Chris volunteered to come tonight to listen, but really it's relying upon how quickly we can take a look at, all right, if we split the day in half, split the students in half in any of these courses at this time, and we can plug this teacher in at this time and this teacher here, it's going to take some effort.
And I don't think this is
quite a bit
just
of time.
an IF issue.
It's
in
not
my
just an
opinion,
IF.
'cause
Chris
even if we-
volunteered to be here.
Yeah, okay. I just want to be like, this isn't just,
Right.
falling, because to me, clearly, we see that there's like redistricting that has to happen no
Right.
matter what, because high schools will be equal capacity, or they won't, but the overflow should be equal at the schools. And so then they're both at 130% instead of one at 140 and one at 120,
Well, I think
which still doesn't
number-wise, I think number-wise, both high schools are pretty close, within 50 students or so.
but based on capacity, like so
of the
120 and 140,
Yeah.
is where they're at that
So,
part.
some of the issue is how you split. And so do you split north-south? Do you split 9-10, 11-12? Some of the logics have to play out before it is that we can even get into some of it.
Another thing to consider with the time constraints, you have a split session. You need to readjust your presentation. Chances are pretty good that it won't take as many minutes over time.
Why is that if the instruction hours are the same?
They're probably not gonna be the same if you go 1 to 7, you're gonna have to fit in your lunch and your passing time. The number he gave is without that. So you may have to adjust it.
So we may only get 5 classes instead of 6 classes in a day,
It's possible. I mean, there's just lots of things that need to be worked through.
but that may be that you have your release time opposite of your split schedule time too, since that tends to be our biggest consideration with the 5 versus 6 classes.
You also mentioned modulars on here. Did you have an update on modulars, or is it, I know it's
It's
part of the
It's an option.
potential answer, but they're like 3 or 4 years out, so it's nothing that's gonna help us in the next couple of years. I was just wondering if there was
That's the
something you
point.
learned
That's the
about
point.
it. It's
Yeah.
just that it's an
It's
option.
just not really possible. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have one in the district that is a storage unit and has been a storage unit for a long, long time. It's fine.
We have 2 modulars here that are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have,
Well, I'm talking about ones that aren't being used.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry, I thought you
put
were
in
saying
use.
currently.
Yeah.
Unused.
Yeah, we're good at it.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
Unused, yes.
Is it the one up, is it?
It's the one behind Bush.
Bush,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been there for years.
So
Probably
the
fix it
ability
up.
to acquire or to take one and put it somewhere else,
That's a drop
it's not
in the
it's
bucket.
not really a reality right now. So that's my point.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not like,
I know D93
You could
went
bring in
scrounging the
8
area for modulars a few years ago.
Remember that.
Like Hope Lutheran sold them too, that are at Bonneville.
safety problem instead.
And
Yes.
Remember what they did
And
with
with all the
them?
construction, all the
I'm
construction.
sure they sold them.
no, they're still at Bonneville.
No, they don't have half as many.
So
Well, the ones that they bought.
aside from having a master schedule prepared for you tonight, this is what we've found
Yeah,
so
no,
far.
it's just good.
Um,
Larry, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question. There's several comments from the parent survey saying that our projections of enrollment are incorrect, or this is a scare tactic, or What would you say to those people?
Well, I had a really nice discussion with a gentleman the other night over at Sunnyside, and his response was, yeah, I've seen that graph from Cooperative Strategies, and I see where we're at tonight. But what people need to do is get in and look specifically at the schools that are suffering, not suffering, but having pressure, and look at the neighborhoods and how it is that growth will impact that particular school. So for instance, we talked about Sunnyside and the 50 homes that are sitting over there by Taylorview that are just beginning to come online now. Where is it that those students will go if, you know, families buy those homes and they've got 3 children or whatever the case may be? They have to get in and look beyond what it was that the Cooperative Strategies projected on that line that they're looking at. It's more detailed, more specific than just that particular graph. And I'll remind the board that you know, we were challenging Cooperative Strategies with their data set at the time that it was presented. Didn't think that they had taken some things into consideration, which I think is still accurate. And some of it I think is based on prior information that doesn't necessarily reflect where we're at today. You know, our enrollment might necessarily look flat right now across, but I do not believe that it'll stay that way because of the growth of Idaho Falls and the district.
Our high school enrollment has gone up for 10 years. It's been on an increase for 10 years. You know, I tell people a couple things when I get asked that question. I say, one, first of all, that data was pre-COVID, because that's when we started with Cooperative Strategies, if you remember. And so they just took that same data set to finalize their recommendations. Look at the growth just in the last 2.5 years that their data set doesn't include, number one. But number two, I think, is even more important. I tell people, don't listen to the pro-bond people and don't listen to the anti-bond people. Get in your car and drive around this community. Seriously, figure it out for yourself. Tell me if this community is growing. You can do it. You don't need to listen to me. You don't need to listen to the group on the right, and you don't need to listen to the group on the left. Get in your car on a Sunday afternoon and drive around this community and tell me how many housing and apartment and condo complexes are going up. They're just starting this one south of Home Depot. It's 400 or 500 doors, I can't remember. Just south of Taco Bell, I think that one's near completion. I think it's 100, the 15 or so apartment complexes, 3 stories high. I think there's 4 per floor. I don't know, but I know there's a lot. 15 buildings on Broadway that are just being, some of them are finished.
Behind Papa, is that the one behind?
Yeah, right behind Papa Murphy's. There's 15, give or take there. Sage Lakes, south of Reed's Dairy on Bellin. God, just drive around. And so when people bring that up to me, I just say, you can answer that question on your own. Drive around and tell me what you see. And then ask yourself, is the community growing or not?
And there's the other side of it too, that we've known we've needed these high schools for years. So beyond the growth, we have a problem right now, let alone what's coming down the road. So, I mean, we're trying to clean up things that have been issues for years. And, you know, so just because it wasn't addressed or wasn't taken care of, doesn't mean it wasn't there and isn't a problem.
Yeah. You know, along those lines, I was talking to someone who said, you buy a car and you never change its oil because you can't afford it used to be $20. I think it's like 60 or 70 now for an oil change. So you never change the oil. And 10 years later, it's a lot more expensive than an oil change now. It's probably buying either a new motor or just a new car because you didn't keep up with the maintenance. And our district hasn't built new additional schools for 31 years. And now we got a major, major issue. It's been here for a while, to Hillary's point. But it's something that needs to be addressed now. And so when you don't build additional facilities in 31 years, when it's time to do it, yeah, it's more expensive than if we would have addressed the high schools 10 years ago, or I can't remember the bond dates, but 6 years ago was when it was proposed. Then we could only be talking about 2 elementary schools right now. That'd be really nice. But when things continue to get put off, and for 31 years, there's no additional new schools, it needs to be addressed now. And that's why it's the price tag that it is, 2 elementary schools and basically 2 high schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me that you might have?
Oh, I'm sure there are, but
Yes, we
Feedback
get to
is-
talk about this again.
I'm sure of it.
And again, and again.
I appreciate you putting this together because this is something to study and I'll learn more. But I would, speaking for me, feel free for anyone else to back me up if you feel likewise to continue to study and look at impact to teachers. I don't know if you can start looking at a master schedule or if a master schedule is like shut the door and 5 people in a room start on a great big whiteboard. I don't know what that looks like. I've never done one before. So I have no idea, but I just feel like we need to continue to move forward on all options.
Will do.
Would like to see it continue to be on our agendas on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a talking point that's not gonna go away. I mean, this is gonna impact our community as a whole. I mean, in every way, shape and form. It's school, it's extracurricular, it's employment, it's.
And they have a
everything.
cost too. All
Yeah.
of this has a cost. There's no part of this that's
Free.
free.
Right.
So
That is
you've gotta
correct.
know, where that's coming to.
Very
We
good.
appreciate the work. Thank you
Yeah.
all. Thanks. The agenda.
Action item on
Yes.
First,
what you have in your packet.
Yeah.
Oh, I brought it with
It's a
me now.
PDF.
Yeah. The reading development.
We are required by the state, you can see the code that's there to submit a plan by November 1st, specific to reading skills development. And what you have in front of you is a statement about what it is that we do. There's a paragraph there down at the bottom. And then all of the professional development associated with these items. Some of it's dyslexia, that's the new law that's in front of us to be able to work through and address. And so you have a pretty detailed plan with what it is that we're putting before our instructors on how it is that they can receive training. Some of it's already happened. You can, like for instance, all-day kindergarten PD's been done and other such items. So what we're after tonight, and we recommend this approval, is that the board approve this so that we can submit it to the state as directed by them. So we'll need a motion.
Do you submit this every year,
This is a new item. And
okay.
usually we've submitted, things like the SIP and a literacy plan, but with this PD and the things that are required, it's kind of new.
I'll move that we approve the reading skills development plan.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And I need a motion to go into executive session.
We go into executive session.
Second.
Oh, we do the Aye. Okay, and I just need a.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Go ahead.
Sorry, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I just wanted to ask Angela some questions.
Oh.
That's when we were done, but
All right, Larry, continue to heal. We hope to see you soon.
Anybody's